Howdy, folks, and welcome to the PodCAST Iron. My name is Laura Elizabeth Mullen, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Our guest on today's episode is the one and only Matt Eaton. Matt is a contemporary sculptor, printmaker, and art educator based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. While listening to this interview, you'll find out all the details from Matt's journey through life as a professional artist and all of the many career paths that he has explored. So I won't give you any spoilers now. Just know that this conversation with Matt was incredibly interesting, and I was on the edge of my seat through all of the twists and turns of his story. Matt, thank you for letting me interview you. Even though it was quite a while back we recorded this in March of 2025. But thank you for your patience as I'm finally releasing it now, almost 1 year later. So you are a true friend, and I deeply appreciate having you in my life. Before we jump into the interview, I just want to take a minute to thank the sponsors who have helped make this podcast possible, some of them from the very beginning. And so first, the PodCAST Iron is funded in part by individual supporters on Patreon. And so we've got about 20 to 25 of our friends, colleagues, and other acquaintances from the community. So thank you to everyone who has chosen to become a Patreon member to help offset the file hosting costs that I incur keeping this show free and available to public listeners. Your support truly means the world to me. And I'd also like to thank the top supporters of today's episode, which are Sloss Metal Arts and the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. These organizations provide a significant portion of the funding that allows me to continue producing this podcast, and I want to take a few moments to share more about them now. Sloss Metal Arts is a national center for iron casting and metal art based at the National Historic Sloss Furnaces Landmark in Birmingham, Alabama. They host the National Conference on Contemporary Cast Iron Art and Practices every 2 years. And I really hope that you are following Sloss Metal Arts and NCCCIAP on Instagram to stay up to date with all things conference related. I know that this past December, they just accepted applications for the steering committee members for the national conference that's going to be coming up in 2027, spring of 27. And so I'm sure more information will be coming out later this spring and summer about, their open calls and for, you can apply to participate in putting on the conference. So this is definitely one event that I plan for and look forward to, and I hope you will as well. Sloss Metal Arts also currently has open calls for 2026 Visiting Artist in Residence and 2026 Emerging Artists, with the applications for both of those calls due Friday, February 6th. In addition, they're accepting applications for their summer youth apprenticeship, which the deadline of that will be Friday, April 18th. And if you're in the mood for an application that will now be a time crunch, Sloss Metal Arts is also accepting applications on the deadline of January 30th, so very soon, for their 3-year resident artist positions. Of course, all of the information about these positions and how to apply is on their website, which is slossmetalarts.org. Thank you so much to Sloss Metal Arts, not only for supporting this podcast, but for everything that you do to support our community. The Western Cast Iron Art Alliance focuses its efforts on supporting iron casting artists in the western states of the U.S. Their mission is to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art throughout the region. And one of the ways that they do this is by hosting a conference every 2 years. The most recent Western Conference took place in October 2024 in the San Diego area, and I was lucky enough to attend. It was fantastic. While it's still early, the next conference will probably take place in the fall of this year, 2026. There's no word yet that I've heard on their website yet about a date or location. There might be something on Facebook that I may be missing, so let me know. if I am, but I will sure to keep you updated as the plans develop as I hear of them. So, for more information about the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, visit wciaa.org. And you can also email them wciaa@hotmail.com to be added to their mailing list. So thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and its board members for supporting this podcast and the iron casting community in the Western U.S. And now let's get on to this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. All right, Matt Eaton, let's get this show on the road. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Welcome. And first question is, as tradition is, who the hell are you anyways?
Who am I? I'm an iron caster and have been since 1996. I got a BFA from New Mexico Highlands University. I studied under David Lobdell, and then I went to the Tamarind Institute and studied fine art lithography, and then went on to Georgia State University where I studied, got my MFA in focusing mostly in, iron casting with George Beasley. And then I've done a lot of things, but I also have another degree in art education. I have a master's in art education. And I've been actively working as an artist and teaching, and been privileged to live the life of being an artist. Somehow I don't understand how this is possible because I get to do this, but I've been in the arts ever since, which leads to your next question. Like
Yes.
since I was a child. And right now, currently, I stopped teaching about 3 years ago. I was a professor at the Institute of American Indian Arts. I taught sculpture and foundry, and now I work for an artist who actually just recently passed away about a month ago, Jean Quick Smith, and I manage the sculpture studio, and we're still very busy and working. She left us a lot of work to do, and she worked all the way up until the moment she couldn't anymore, which was yeah. So that's where I'm at now. But I'm just lucky. I feel like a lucky duck that I get to be an artist and get to live the life that I do. So yeah.
Well, thank you. There's a lot in that you like. I know you. I've known you for a couple, at least 5 years, if not 7.
7, probably closer to 7 or 8.
Yeah.
We first met in Granite City, I think.
Granite City. Yeah. And you just told some stuff that I didn't even know. I didn't even know. So I'm excited to learn about it. And then this little information about your employer's passing, that's going to be interesting when we get to that part of the story. But like you said, I want to start with maybe some childhood memories that you could see tracing back to, how you've developed into the person and artist that you are today.
God, that's like when you first brought that question to me in the email, I was just like, oh, this is easy. I'm going to talk about my mom. And then I was thinking, just as we were beginning the conversation and, the housekeeping stuff, that I was thinking a lot about like my dad too. So when I was a kid, my mom was an artist.
Okay.
She was actually in art school, and she was in the painting program. She was actually started art school at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and that's where my parents met. And life happens. They have kids. And they ended up moving to New Mexico. And my mother started college when we were really little. After all the kids had been born, after I was born, she decided to go back to school, and she was in art school. She was a painting student at UNM. And then it was difficult for her, so she quit being a painting student, became an anthropology student. But she was always bringing stuff home, like clay. They would go on clay digs. She was like studying like traditional native pottery and all this stuff. And simultaneously, my dad was like rebuilding VWs. So and this is a memory I just had was like my playroom smelled like gasoline because my dad was always taking apart an engine
Yeah.
and sometimes two, and there were always things around. And I always had, like, as it relates to cast iron, I always had like an affinity for tools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as an artist, I always had art around me my entire life. My mother, after quitting the painting program and going into anthropology, they realized that she could draw, and so she didn't have to do any of the digging because they were like, "You can draw. Can you draw the dig sites?" And that ended up leading her to a job at the Maxwell Museum and helping out with curatorial stuff and also illustrations. And she ended up turning it into a business. Became a graphic designer. And then later, when my dad became an attorney, he was in law school when I was real little, but he was in a case, and my dad needed like a big evidence board to, talk about an injury, and my mom did the drawing for it. Was of a guy's hand. It was a some sort of malpractice thing where they cut something wrong, and my dad won the case, and the guy on the other side was just like, "Who did your evidence drawings?" And then the people started asking my mom, and then my mom was just like, I could just turn this into a business. And so I grew up with a mother who was a medical illustrator. She became a licensed and certified medical illustrator. So there was always stuff around, whether it was play, whether, fixing stuff with my dad. My mother, did everything with paints and Prismacolor color pencils and made models. And I remember growing up and having her help me make models of things. Like I made an aircraft carrier once out of like board, and I was making these little jets that I could play with. So it's always been there. And I remember like even when I was going into I got into a lot of trouble in like middle school and elementary school. I was a
Mm-hmm.
troublemaker real bad.
Yeah.
And my parents were just like, we got to get him out of the school system. And my dad at that time had been teaching at a private school. That's what brought them to New Mexico, taught at a private school here in Albuquerque called the Albuquerque Academy. And my dad was like, yeah, he's not going to fit at the Albuquerque Academy because it's a very kind of prestigious, preppy school.
Okay.
Um, and then they didn't want me to go to public school anymore because I was,
Yeah. Yeah.
smoking dope and doing,
Yeah.
things sixth graders shouldn't be doing. Um, and
Yeah.
and so they put me in I got into a school, another private school, but it was much more kind of liberal arts oriented,
Yeah.
and it was the best place for me to go. And they made me do the sixth grade over again, but they had a really good art program, and
Yeah.
and my parents wanted me to go to that school because they're like, he's going to be an artist.
Mm-hmm.
We just we just know that Matthew's going to be an artist,
Yeah.
and that was the best thing. And I had great art teachers. I had an art teacher named Peter Bylan in middle school who was just craziest guy in the world. Um, he always had big beard with pencils in it, So if you need a pencil, he just pull one out of his like endless beard. And then I had another art teacher who was actually he was a professor at I think the University of Iowa. He was an Austrian guy. He was like a Holocaust survivor. And he's still alive today. He's like 90 something. But he was a ceramicist and he taught ceramics at Iowa and then became the high school art teacher. So I had this amazing art teacher that had an MFA who studied with like Yoshi Hamada in Japan and like had all this incredible background. And he got me into ceramics and he got me into printmaking. And, you know, it was just, it was amazing. And then, did so many cool things. I mean, I had people in my high school that were, the grandchildren of famous Pueblo potters. And they would bring their, grandma in to do pit firings with us. It was a girl, Leslie Lewis. She has a different last name now, but her mother, Lucy Lewis, or her grandmother, Lucy Lewis, was a very famous, Pueblo potter. and one of the most famous. And so she helped us do things. And this was like right before she died, because I think she died in the, mid to late 90s, but she was doing pit firings with us in 1991 and coming to our school and helping us make pots. Um, and of course, my dad's sister was a potter
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
well-established ceramics artist who's carried by galleries in Philadelphia, and she just retired, and she's in her mid 80s right now.
Okay.
So
So a
yeah,
lot
it's
of
a
support, it sounds
lot
like.
of support. Like, my parents were so glad that like when I got into grad school and got a full tuition waiver and an assistantship and stipend, my dad was just overjoyed. He was just
Yeah.
like, "You mean I don't have to pay for grad school?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "I'll pay for your materials." And I was just
Oh.
like, "Boy, you're in trouble." He had no idea.
No, I know. They can't. They don't.
Yeah,
It's better
like,
that way
why'd you
sometimes.
spend $1,200 on sand? Like,
Well, you were paying for
yeah, you're paying for it, and I'm making
it.
big molds.
Yeah. So how did you get from that really supportive of the arts childhood then to the grad school? What was that storyline?
Well, I had a lot of support in undergrad.
Okay.
I had,
So from so this is like a elementary school, middle school. That was what they got you into with the was that elementary school
that
or
was
was it
all the way to high school, basically.
okay, it was like the whole thing. And
I
then
was getting into this stuff in high school.
all right.
Not
And
casting, but
yeah.
ceramics and
Yeah.
printmaking, and I loved printmaking.
Okay. And so
Still,
then remind me because you said it right at the beginning, but remind me then where did you go to undergrad? Just
I went
lead
to
me
New
through.
Mexico Highlands University.
Okay.
So, and this is a funny story because I didn't want to. I was also getting into literature at that time, and I remember this sort of notion in my head going, "Yeah, you can't be an artist. That's just artists. They don't make anything. They don't make any money." And I remember at one point I just didn't want to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was always pushing me in the direction of tools and things. So our high school had this thing that you get like for the last 6 or 8 weeks of school, you can go on a senior experience and go get a job in the working world, and where all the kids in my class were going to go work at their dad's law office, or they're going to go work at their dad's engineering firm and intern there. My dad's like, "Well, we got to tear down the house up in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Why don't you go up there and tear down the house, and I'll pay you guys under the table $250 a week." And I took my best friend with me,
Mm-hmm.
artist, and he's a tattoo artist in Portland, Oregon now, Cheyenne Sawyer. So me and Cheyenne moved up and tore down a house. And then summer hit, we started rebuilding the house. And so I worked on a crew with two other people. It was me, Cheyenne, and our carpenter and an electrician. I think there was another helper there too. And so we worked on building the house all summer long. And then when summer was getting towards the end, my dad's like, "Why don't you go to college up there?" And I was like, "Where?" He's like, "At Highlands University." And I was like, "Where's Highlands University?" He was like, "It's in Las Vegas. It's like the biggest thing in Vegas, Matthew." And I was just like, "Okay, I'll apply." And I applied and I got in. And when I did my first advisor meeting, I met this person, and she was, you know, one of the art teachers, she was the printmaking professor.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing the thing with me, like, "Let's get you signed up for classes. What do you want your major to be?" And I was like, "I'm going to be an English major." And she was like, "Why do you want to be an English major?" She was like, "You're left-handed. Have you ever done any art?" And I was just like, "Well, yeah, like my mom's an artist, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, my aunt's an artist, and I know a lot about ceramics, and I've done some printmaking." And she was like, "You've done printmaking?" And then next thing you know, she was just like, "Okay, you're going to be an art student. I'm going to sign you up for this class and this class, and you're going to be my new you're going to be my new printmaking assistant. And I was just
Okay.
like, whoa, lady, like easy, moving a little fast here. And her name was Catherine Klinger, and she's the head of the art department at the College of the Atlantic. I still keep in touch with her to this day,
Yeah.
but it was because of her I entered college as a printmaking student. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was so supportive. And I was very active in printmaking, and out in front of the art building every day. I'd smoke a cigarette. And David Lobdell, who was the sculpture professor,
Yeah.
came and came out, and David and I smoked cigarettes together every day. And one day he's just like, would you take my class?
Yeah.
And I was just, what class? And it's like the foundry class on Tuesday and Thursday nights. And I was like, no, I don't really, not into it. And he was just like, will you please take my class? Because I need one more student to sign up for it, or else they're going to cancel it. And I was just like, well, and like two of my best friends were in that class.
Yeah.
Clearly, they were foundry students. And I was like, I'll take that class, but I don't want to do any of that mold making bullshit. I was just like, totally not into it.
Yeah.
And like, all right, fine, you can do whatever you want in my class. Just sign up for the foundry class.
Okay.
And I fell in love with welding right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fell in love with just the whole vibe in the
Yeah.
place. And so I got hooked right away. And that was one of the things, like David, um, and Catherine and all my professors they were always kind of pushing you to do more. And David was just like, hey, let's go on a road trip. And how I got into casting iron, because David wanted to cast iron, and he didn't want to go alone.
Yeah.
He wanted to take his little minions with him.
Yeah.
And so the
All the
first,
professors do it.
yeah, and our first iron pour was, and my first iron pour was back in 1996,
Yeah.
the University of Kentucky. And it was the UK second annual iron pour. And everything was being run by Tom Gipe and Wayne Potre. And and so it was during Jack Gron's time at
Okay.
UK.
Yeah.
But that's where I met Wayne Potras for the first time. It's where I
Yeah.
met Thomas Gipe,
Yeah.
and Jack Gron and Gary Bibbs and
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Marsh. It's where I first met Andrew Marsh. Allison Let Kirby was at that same pour. And so that was a game changer for us. And then,
And
the
that was
next,
a drive too.
oh yeah, 2-day drive for us.
2-day drive.
Yeah, and David didn't want to go with us. He's like, you guys are on your own. What happens on the road stays on the road. I'll meet you there. So
And he
we
flew.
just,
Did he fly
I know
in?
he probably drove. I don't know
He
how
just
David
drove. That's fine.
just didn't want to be with his students. Didn't want to get in trouble. And so, yeah, so we showed up there, and a lot of people looked at us like we were from outer space, because we were like, I was still like, my first experiences pouring, and the way because I didn't want to make molds, is I drew lines in the dirt, and did like a skew geometry of like steel parts and would connect them together. And so when I did that, people looked at me like I was from Mars or something. They're like, why is he pouring the metal in the dirt? You know? Um, but I ended up making an awesome piece. My aunt owns that piece. She bought it, within a couple years of me making it. She was just like, that's a fantastic piece of art. And so she owns that piece now. But that was the first cast iron piece I ever made, was pouring in the dirt in the UK, sculpture yard. I remember that. I had a
That
lot of
was
fond memories.
in 96. Oh man.
Yeah.
All right. So then what happened?
Then we just started going to iron pours all the time.
Yeah.
And then I was getting really into grad school and looking at, like, I want to be a professor. I want to go to grad school. I want to focus on my artwork. And so we took a bunch of trips We went to Georgia State. I poured with George Beasley. I think we did a few other things where we ran into like Charles Hook. Uh, later on, I'd meet all sorts of people. And it was just wild. Like I remember being at the Georgia State Iron Corps, and I fell in love with GSU immediately. Um, I fell in love with their sculpture yard, the sculpture building, the old tools. It reminded me of like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be repaired and fixed. I like to fix things. And so that was like when I poured at Georgia State, I remember like I think I really wanted to go to school here, but at that time I wasn't entirely sure because I was also still a printmaker.
Yeah.
And I remember we got back from that trip at night, like 2 days later, because it's like 2 day drive from Atlanta to Las Vegas, New Mexico. And we got into the foundry, and my boss, because David also got me a job at a foundry in Corrales, New Mexico, really close to where I live or where I grew up. And so my boss called us at the Highlands Foundry, and it was like, "Is Matt there?" And David's like, "Yeah, he's right here." And then that's when Jim Crane told me that I got into the Tamron Institute to study lithography. And then I was like, well, I need to like call, George Beasley.
Yeah.
And I didn't call anybody else. I had like I sent out like 4 applications to schools.
Yeah.
And I applied to UT Austin to study with
Mm.
Steve Lee. I applied to um, Florida State University to study with Hook. I applied to UK to study with Gron. I sent an application to SIUE to study with Tom Geip, and I sent an application to Georgia State University. And the funny thing was, I didn't. I was a kid. I didn't respond to mail because they didn't
Yeah.
really have email back then. This was
Yeah.
like 1997.
Yeah.
Like I think You Got Mail with Tom Hanks came out in 1997. I think that's when
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
AOL became a thing and people were
Right.
like, the internet. Um, so I never like contacted people. And I found out later that Jack Gron had been waiting for me to show up for school. And I was supposed to be in school with Jerry Massey. And, I didn't contact anybody. And then like I remember Jack Gron kind of getting mad one time. Like I was at the Mid America, you know, um,
Yeah.
sculpture conference, and Jack and I was working with, because it was at UK that year, and Jack was like,
Okay.
"We showed up," and I was like, "I'm
Oh.
at Georgia State," and I kind of felt bad, kind of felt like an asshole because I didn't contact anybody, but I got to still those people were always still a part of my life, like
Yeah. I
I'll
mean,
always remember the pours with Jack Groen. I'll always remember pouring with Charles Hook. I'll
yeah.
always remember, working with Stephen Daly, and a lot of these people are gone now. Like Stephen just passed
I
away,
know. I know. I'm
Guy
so sorry.
passed away like a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's just, it's, there's just a lot of, Butch Jack, I
I
mean,
know.
all these people they've been very close friends,
Yeah.
throughout my life. Even when I was when I first met you, I was having such a good time with like Tom Geip and
Yeah.
Wayne.
Because
I
they
think
were
someone
both
got a
there.
yeah, because I think someone got a picture, and I think Toby took a picture. Toby Flores took a picture, like here's Matt explaining iron casting to Tom Geip and Wayne Poetry. And I'm like standing, and they're both sitting in chairs. And I'm standing above them, kind of pointing. I was like, that's not what I was doing, man. I love those guys.
That's hilarious, though. It's hilarious.
Yeah, but I kind of went off track there. But yeah, that whole, getting to travel around and meet people in the
Yeah.
community has been like one of the things that I just I can't get over because I mean I such a rich young life iron
Yeah.
cast because, after I was at Georgia State, that's when I met the guys at Sloss, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Alan
Yeah.
Peterson and Eric Johnson. And they
Yeah.
came to the Georgia State Christmas Iron Pour
Yeah.
with like a ton of molds. They like back there trucking. They were pouring gift shop molds for Sloss at our iron pour. We were like, really, guys? Like,
That's a
they had
partnership
they
right
had
there.
they had a pallet of molds, in the back of their truck. So it was like, but then I started going to Sloss every weekend because it was only a 2-hour drive,
Right. Yeah.
from Atlanta. So it's like, that's nothing if you live in New Mexico. A lot of people are like,
Oh, yeah.
go all the way to Birmingham. I'm just like, it's only 2 hours away.
Yeah.
It's like
Because you're used
driving to
to,
Vegas. I'm used to driving. It's all open space out here.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm the exact opposite because I'm from Massachusetts. And so
yeah,
I'm
everything's
like, you
really
drove
close.
2 hours, like two
Yeah.
hours? What do you mean you didn't go through 5 states in 2 hours?
Yeah, it's
Like,
like my
what?
uncle, like my dad's from Massachusetts,
Oh,
and
really?
my uncle, like one time I was doing a iron conference, or it was a sculpture conference at RISD. It was in Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
This was in 1990. It might have been 96 as well, and that's where I first met Kurt Deerhog and
Yeah.
some of the more people. But I remember like I had to go do this thing at Paul King Foundry, which was like, I don't know, 35 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, but in Rhode Island terms, it was on the other side of the state. He's like, you're going all the way over there? You better pack a lunch, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm like, really, Johnny? It's 35 minutes away.
Yeah.
Like, that's on the other side of the state.
It's on the other side of the state. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's wild. Like you can drive for 4 hours and still be in the same state. Like
Yeah.
that's wild to me. Like
Yeah.
not so much anymore. I've grown up a little bit, but a little bit. But yeah, it's funny. Where
Yeah.
you're from definitely kind of like influences your view on time,
Yeah. It's
driving
like,
time. Oh
oh, we
yeah.
could drive to Florida. Why not? It's no big deal. It's
Yeah.
only 6 hours away.
So any memories from Georgia that you want to share with us?
A lot of memories from
Yeah.
Georgia. I think one of the funniest memories I have is because I went to Highlands University and David only did ceramic shell at that time. And I went to grad school in a place that only did sand molds. I didn't know how to make a sand mold. And so it was about 2 weeks into being in grad school. I was still really uncertain about what I was doing. And, and I didn't know, like, you don't realize that when you go to grad school, like, you think you're going to have like a professor that's always there and always available. And then you come to the realization like the guy really doesn't want me to bother him at all. So I had to march up the hill to George's office and be like, I don't know how to make a sand mold. And he was just like kind of flustered and he like pulled this book off of his bookshelf and it was the Metal Caster's Bible and he opened it up to this
Yeah.
one page. He's like, there's a cope and a drag. There's two halves. He's like, go ask Matt Wicker. And I was just like,
I was gonna say, because I'm
and
trying to remember if you guys had,
me and Matt Wicker
um,
were in school together. And
yeah,
Matt
yeah,
Wicker, like, when I first showed up, like, Matt was just like, he was another grad student, was just talking to that guy. And so I had to go up to Matt Wicker and be like, I don't know how to make a sand mold. And Matt Wicker looked at me. He was just like, you don't know how to make a sand mold? How'd you get into grad school? Like, he's like, I was just like, I've just only done ceramic shell. And I just like, I don't know how to do this. But that set forth like a really great relationship. Like, I just sort of shadowed Matt Wicker. I just did whatever Matt Wicker did.
mm-hmm.
Uh, and I learned, honestly, you know, and George did teach me a lot about mold making, but in the
Yeah,
beginning it was Matt Wicker, was the one who really was my teacher, you know,
yeah,
because he was a year ahead of me in grad school, and
mm-hmm.
then we became really close friends, and then we started pouring iron over at UGA because Biz was at UGA with
UGA.
Jimbo, and Larry Millard,
Mm-hmm.
because at first she was more of a stone carver, so she was doing a lot of stuff with Larry Millard, but she started getting more and more to the casting. So like her whole thesis show was both stone and cast iron elements,
Yeah.
kind of combined. But that was just an amazing thing because we started just going back and forth. If I wasn't going to Sloss in Birmingham, I was going to Athens
Yeah.
and working over there and hanging out with Jimbo and Leanne and John, Rollerson,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and David Jones was an undergrad at that point. It was just like that's how my community began, and like the people I met in those first like 5 years are still my friends today. Like going from Ted Duran to Toby Flores, Jason Kimes, Kelly Ludeking, Matt, Biz, John Rollerson, everybody, I know today I met in those first years,
Yeah.
you know, bouncing around the country like a
Yeah.
crazy person,
Yeah.
going to Iron Force because that's what you did. You
Yeah.
just hop in the truck and let's go. Hey, they're
Yeah.
pouring iron over in Carbondale. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's still a day drive, but yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. So like all those folks, like, and it's just amazing to see how all those people have just done so well. You know, I mean, there's not many of the friends that I made in those early days who aren't still doing it,
They're killing it too.
killing it. They're
Yeah.
killing it. We're all, I think,
Yeah.
honestly, I think we're all killing it. I think
Yeah.
we're all doing something unique and interesting. You know,
And
I
making an
can't
impact on the community.
always,
Yeah.
and that's that. I just love that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're at Georgia State, you're meeting all these people, your
My
support
circle's
circle
getting
is grow.
bigger. Yeah,
Yeah. And
getting
then
getting a lot bigger.
you go to Sloss in the 90s.
Late 90s.
So what's that like? And was it for a conference first or did you just go
we
cuz you
just
need
went. We went to go help Eric and Alan do something,
Mhm.
and then we just started going all the time. And that's when Paige Wainwright was running the program, and basically she found money from the Alabama State Council for the Arts and the NEA to bring on an emerging artist in residency program. And so me, Matt, and Biz were like the first emerging artists in residence. And so we were like, and we were already helping the guys at Sloss out for road, helping with those community boards that they were doing. No, but it was just like we started spending a lot of time there, and we did like, Eric had a dream of, because back then when I first went to Sloss, there was no concrete anywhere. It was you weren't allowed to pour concrete back there, and it took a lot of effort because at that time they had an industrial archaeologist who did not want the metal artist to disturb the dirt. Like we were only allowed to dig so deep. We were only allowed to do so much. They did give us the first shed, which is still there to this day. Um, they did a pad for that, but then we slowly started adding pads. While Eric and Alan were there, and me and Matt and Biz were the ears, we started pouring, slabs all the way down the one side facing First Avenue. Um, and that created the mold slab to making molds. And pretty soon, I was still really into ceramic shell. So we started doing some ceramic shell there. And we had ceramic, like there was a conference, I think it was in 2002 or yeah, it might have, no, 1999. There was a conference. And back then, this was right before it turned to the national conference on, you know, cast iron art. It was the Southern Conference on contemporary cast iron art. And I remember that was like, one of the first big conferences I'd attended. And, that's where I met Barry Bailey, who's also
Yeah. Past.
lost
Yeah.
to us now.
Yeah.
But that was a huge thing. And I remember we had a tent revival show that Barry Bailey
Yeah.
um curated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just an amazing time. That's where I first met, everybody, I
Mm.
think, that I still know. Like that's
Yeah.
where I first met Kelly Ludeking, I think was in 99. I first met, Toby and Jason Kimes and all those Kevin Shun and all those people at that
Yeah.
99 conference. And
Yeah.
then I think a few years later, as things progressed, and after I finished up my studies at
Mhm.
graduate school. I didn't finish for a few years because I took an exceptionally long time to write my thesis paper.
Some of
Um,
us can relate to that.
yeah, yeah. Last time I saw George and Judy Beasley, Judy was like, "Did you even graduate?" And I was just like, "Yeah." And George was like, "He graduated. It just took him a few extra years."
Yeah.
Uh, because I got in a lot of trouble in grad school because I didn't do the academic stuff. Even
Mm.
the art history professor. I had this art history professor, and she's passed away now too, but she drugged me out of the sculpture studio and made me sit at a chair at her desk in her office and do art history work.
Hmm. To just hold
And
your
and I
feet to the
couldn't argue with
fire.
her. She was a tough lady. She was like
Yeah.
this little lady, but she's like, "Don't fuck with me. I have an MFA in sculpture, I have an MFA in painting, and I have a PhD in art history. You don't know shit." And and she was like, I was like, "Okay,
Okay.
I'll do whatever you tell me to do."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Her name was Thomasine Bradford. I didn't realize what an amazing sculptor she was until after she made me sit in her office and I started researching her and going, "Oh
Yeah.
my God, you know,
Mhm.
this is amazing." And she was a huge influence on me too. I just got lucky with a lot of professors.
Mhm.
So yeah, I miss a lot of them.
Mm. I can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw Jimbo.
You did.
I
How's Jimmo
did.
doing?
Really good. Really
Good.
good. He and
Yeah,
Leanne actually were up last week. They came up to the St. Louis area. Um, you know. So it's good. They're doing
nice.
really good. It was really fortunate that I live here because they were visiting, because Noah and Allison are in this area and there's other people. And so it's like a nice little tight knit little like unexpected iron community in the St. Louis area. But yeah, so they came up to visit like a bunch of friends and I did an in-person interview of him
Oh,
and
nice.
Leanne. And so that was kind of crazy because I've never done an in-person interview before. I've always just done it through Zoom.
Yeah, yeah,
But it was great. It was so great because I got to ask him a lot of questions that I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to ask him. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, totally.
So anyway, so yeah, I miss them a lot and I don't reach out as often as I should. And so yeah, this is if you're listening or watching, this is your sign to reach out to your
Fine to reach out
professors.
to your old
Just
professor.
say
Sure.
hi. Cause that's something that, they talk to me about too, is it's like they had a lot of students over the years and they
They did.
come and you get really close and then the students go off into their own lives and so yeah, just
Yeah.
reach out.
Sometimes they might forget us, but we never forget
No,
them.
no. And the ones that really make a big impact, like lasting impact, most of the time they won't forget us
Yeah,
and all of the embarrassing stories. They won't forget those either.
yeah, yeah.
I get reminded of a lot of embarrassing.
I think Leanne could probably tell some pretty embarrassing stories.
Anyways, where were we? So we were talking about, so you were at the SLOS conference and then you graduated. We talked about you graduated. So did you go to live in Birmingham right after, or what happened
Yeah,
right
I
after
pretty
grad
much
school?
I got asked to take on the metal arts coordinator position.
Okay.
Um and that's when you know Alan was running it, but he got into grad school at University of Minnesota with Wayne.
Oh,
So he was leaving, and
yeah.
then David Jones, who was, the, number two, was going to go to UT Knoxville. And then, Paige Wainwright reached out to me and said, you want to take over Eric Johnson's job and you would need to find another person. And I said, okay, I can find another person easily. And I reached out to Julie Ward, um, because I was just like, you know what, you know, we could build a good program. And that was still at a time where, I don't know, there was still that kind of, it was sort of the big boys kind of club kind of thing, and I felt that, and I was just like, well, I want to, bring Julie Ward in because Julie was working for Phil Hutzelman at Inferno Foundry in Atlanta. And she was friends with like a lot of, we'd crossed paths many times. But I was like, if we really want to bring Sloss, further along, we should bring Julie because she has rubber mold making experience and ceramic shell experience. And, and there needs to be more women, around in that environment. And so she was like first and only choice basically for me. Uh, and and it was perfect. And Julie worked her ass off, and ended up staying there. I think she might have been, honestly, I think Julie Ward might have been the longest standing artist in residence at Sloss, because she worked there. God,
And
I don't
so
know.
probably,
We could probably ask Julie Ward. I could
but
text her. How
let
many
me,
years did you actually end
well,
up wasting
let
over
me
there?
guess, because that huge thing that happened in 2000 and what the, it was like 2010, the December of 20, it was either,
Oh, the day, the red masker day of all the Sloss employees.
yeah, I feel like
Where they did
she,
just basically everyone's got to go. And I think that, yeah. So
I
she
think
was there
so.
from 19 or 2001. She was there for like 8 or 9 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, I honestly think she's the longest standing person. Besides, I'd have to really think of Ajane right now because Ajane Williams has been there since
Since
he
he
was
was a kid.
a kid.
Yeah,
Ajane might have the record, but I don't know if we're gonna count his Sloss summer youth apprenticeship.
maybe. Well, yeah, yeah, yeah,
But Ajane is amazing.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. But yeah. So yeah, then I brought me and Julie, and then we had John Stewart Jackson.
Hmm. Mm.
And then we had Joe McCreary, who was always kind of a part of Sloss, but he was also doing a lot of stuff at Alabama Art Casting.
Yeah,
So I mean, we had a killer crew
yeah.
back then. Yeah, it was exciting.
Mm. And so this is like a lot of road pours. Where was the summer youth program going, or what was
Yeah, the summer
happening
youth
then?
program was going. Like at that time, I think Sloss was kind of, the summer youth apprenticeship program was being run by Vaughn Randall. Um, and then Vaughn had an assistant that he worked with, and I'm trying to think of how it all worked out. And I think slowly, Julie transitioned into the summer youth apprenticeship program, and I was more of the equipment, and you know, and I did all the workshops, of course, that metal arts workshops. But that was an interesting time. So we had the summer use, we had all our other stuff that we had to do. It was a very busy time. Like summer was busy at Sloss
And hot, probably.
and hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the conferences were still happening every 2 years.
Yeah, we had the first one that we actually coined as the national conference was in 2001, I think, or maybe 2002. I'm trying to think because I think there was an international conference
Okay.
at John Hillier in either 2001 or 2002. And we might have had the first of ours in 2001 that we called the national.
Okay.
And then we had one in 2003. And that was, after 2003, I left Sloss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about Sloss before we move on with you in
I'm just
2003?
glad to see that Sloss has developed into such an amazing metal arts program. From seeing it in its beginning,
Infancy, yeah.
when it was like Rick Batten kind of out there by himself, to what it's become now.
Yeah.
And I was a part of those early planning stages, and I still have all the initial drawings for the development of the gallery space, and all that stuff, and artist studio spaces and things like that. So not a lot happened on that initial one because we were going to enclose the entire shed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But later on they built that whole other building. So it's
Yeah.
just been a joy to watch that place develop and grow. And they've had such an amazing, group of people cycling through that place. I mean,
Yeah.
I have one of my former students from IAIA, Alexandra,
Yeah.
um, is they are finishing up, and
They're
they've been
artists
there
in
for
residence.
yeah, they've been there for 3 years, four
Yeah.
years, I think
Yeah.
now. Yeah. So I'm just really pleased to see how, that program is done,
Yeah. I mean, it gives a lot of people opportunities. It gives a lot of exposure to the local community, it seems
for
like.
sure.
For someone that's not regional to there, I drop in every 2 years and I'm like, yeah, it looks great. But it does look great. Like
Yeah.
just seeing how it's being built up and,
But the foundry hasn't changed that much.
yeah.
That's the one thing I noticed is like, it's still the way, me, Eric, Alan, and Vaughn really developed that site in the years that we were there. I mean, we got the crane put up, the big jib crane that we named Guggenheim after Hal Hendricks, who was named Guggenheim by his dad. Uh, but a lot of the main infrastructure of how they do things hasn't changed since the stuff that we did there, between that crew. Going from Alan, Eric, me and Vaughn, Julie, and John Stewart and Joe McCreary. you know, we we made leaps and bounds in a short period of time to get that foundry working great, and it was always all hands in, and let's get it done and let's make this place spectacular. And it's pretty spectacular.
It is very
I love
spectacular.
going. I
Yeah.
love visiting. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'd want to live there. I was thinking about doing applying for the residency. I was like, no, I'll wait a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Give
apply
it
for that
time.
artist residency. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you're still wrapping up stuff with, your job and everything. And so, well,
Yeah,
let's keep on going.
yeah,
But
let's keep on going.
I would be interested because that would be like I said a second ago, like an interesting bookend because you were there at the beginning and then to go now. I'd be interested to see what work would come out of that. Right?
I have ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So it's 2003. And where did you go?
After I left Sloss, when I was at Sloss, we were doing a job, with this company. It's called Allen Architectural Metals. Now it's being run by Kate Allen. I worked for her dad, John Allen. But they approached us at Sloss to help them cast um a big, it was this big like column base that was originally done out of terracotta. It was a historic part of Chicago. And we were going to make a fountain for Millennium Park. And it was going to be out of this. And it was a big piece. I mean, it was huge. And they wanted it cast out of bronze. And they were like, well, what do we need to do? And me and Julie were like, well, you need to make a rubber mold of it. And then they were like, okay, we'll make a rubber mold of it. And oh, they showed up with this gigantic box that was like, I don't know, Julie could tell you, it was like we saw it, we just almost laughed because it was, they basically took, looked like about 30 gallons of rubber and poured it over this big piece and filled this entire box because they came from a sand molding background. They had no idea. And so we were like, the hell is this? We actually, I remember uh Julie and we'd come up with this idea to mount the thing on an engine block holder. So we bolted it on there so that we could spin it and pour and do a wax out of this. And then I'd gotten a bronze tilt furnace from Donnie Keene. This was a long ass time ago, but I got this furnace from Donnie that he gave me and Matt Wicker and Eric when we were ears, and it just sort of sat in a scrap bin, kind of pile back into Sloth. And so once we got this mold, we were like, okay, we got to make this thing. So we ended up setting up the bronze tilt furnace, especially for this one piece. And so, and it turned out great. We did a huge bronze casting. It was probably about 380 pound, casting that we poured into a single shell. We just put the shell right in front of the tilt furnace and just poured the metal from the tilt furnace right into the mold. Um, so when I left Sloss, I went to their place in Talladega and I said, "Can I have a job?" Because I needed a job because I didn't have a job anymore, and they hired me right away. And so I did cast iron restoration work with them. Actually, the first thing I did was help build the U.S. Capitol handrails for the inaugural address. There's these bronze rails. And then I just did all sorts of radically cool stuff with that company for the 2 years I worked for them. And then I left them because it just became too hard on my life because I was traveling like week on, week off. I was always in New York, mostly New York. And I was just like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. And I took a job where I think seems like all the Sloss artists and residents go to work. I worked for this guy Shay Scully, who had a shop, you know, in Birmingham off of Second Street or Second Avenue South, I think it was. And because I know I worked there, Remy worked there. I know that Chris, who was one of the artists in residence and a former summer youth apprentice, worked there. And I think Ajane might have even worked there a little bit for Shay. It seemed like everyone went through Shay's shop at one point. Uh, and then I completely left the South. And when we were getting ready to have my first child, who's now 18, he lives in Chicago. Um, we moved back to New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah. So by the time 2000, yeah, it was about 2006, I made it back to New Mexico. 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
And I've been back home ever since, basically.
Yeah. So you had your first child and you're readjusting back to the Southwest.
Yeah.
And so were you able to pick up making art right away?
No.
Oh,
See, that's where I have a long pause. You know, once I left the South, I, I got a job immediately in Albuquerque working for a place called High Desert Forge, and they were doing a massive public art project, all out of steel. And so that was like that dovetailed into my experience perfectly. And I only worked for them for a very short period of time, because they didn't pay well. And I remember, like, I just had my son Aiden, and they were paying me 13.50 an hour, which was $4 less than I was getting paid in Alabama. I think it was 17 or $18 an hour in Alabama. And then when I was doing road work, I was getting paid, time and a half or double time. So I was making really good money. They were only paying 13.50 an hour. So I said, well, first I looked for another job, and I had a close family friend that ran a commercial construction company, and I approached them, and they were just like, yeah. And he was like, I'll start you off at $18 an hour and you can do welding. And I was like, perfect. So I went into my bosses at High Desert Forge and I said, I quit. And they said, you just had a kid. You're never going to get paid more than 13.50 an hour in Albuquerque. And I said, oh, I got another job. They're like, well, what are they paying you? I said, $18 an hour. And they wouldn't bend, and I worked construction, for years. And then after, and I was still trying to apply for art jobs. Like I was still trying to get a job teaching. And I went through the hiring process at UNM, I think twice, and they both fell through. And I didn't like, I like construction, but I didn't like, I wanted to be more in control. And so I went to my boss and I said, would you sign off on a qualifying party certificate? That's the process to get a contractor's license in New Mexico. So you have to get qualifying party certificate. And you have to have at least 3 other licensed contractors to sign on to it. So I went through that process and I started my own company. And then the company that I worked for, Hart Construction, became my bread and butter client for my welding business.
so they were hiring you.
To do
Yeah.
handrails, dumpster gates, whatever.
Yeah.
If it had to do with welding. So, and that was a great time. I mean, I ran that welding company for 6 years. I was building
Yeah.
restaurant, schools, doing some high-end fabrication, but it burned me out. And I was really missing art.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was just getting kind of lost, trying to run a business, because all you do when you run a business is chase money. You're
Yeah.
always chasing people down for money. And then you're trying to chase people down for money so that you can pay the guys that you employ. And at that
Yeah.
time, I had 6 employees,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know, and I had them on job sites all over the
Yeah.
place. And it was just soul killing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can get a job teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied to a private school, and I didn't get the job,
Mm-hmm.
but they were kind enough to reach out to me and say, Matt, if you want to get back into teaching, you should take some art education classes, and that will better suit you for doing something at the high school level. So I ended up shutting down my business, and going to graduate school for an art education master's. And I did that, and I did all my stuff, student teaching, all of my licensure work, and I became a licensed K through 12 art teacher. And then I got a job at the Institute of American Indian Arts,
Yeah.
because I was having a hard time finding a job and I was getting frustrated. We
Yeah.
had 2 kids, we were poor. And I think it came out of an argument, with my former wife, the mother of my children. And I was like, fine, I'll look on Craigslist for a job. And I jump on Craigslist and I found a job that said, you know, foundry technician needed for a college art sculpture program. And I was just like, well,
Let's
there
go.
you go. That's
Yeah.
me. And I was in a master's program with a guy who taught and worked at IAI, and I called him up and I was like, Nakona, there's this thing in here, that IAI is looking for a foundry technician. And he was just like, oh my God, Matt, he'd be perfect. And I was just like, okay, so I'm gonna
Ah.
apply. And then I got that job, and within a year and a half, I became a professor there.
Mm-hmm.
I taught for I worked at that school for about 8 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fantastic. Loved it. Got to build the foundry of my dreams. Had a great
Yeah.
program. We were making sand molds. I was taking my students all over the freaking place to pour iron.
Yeah.
And so I was back in it. But there's that time period, about 8 years or 9 years, where I was not doing it. But it never leaves you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing. Just it never leaves you. And if you're going to be an artist, you're going to be an artist. You know, you
And
find
I
a
think
way.
it's good for people to hear that, because people that are listening to this, that they might be in their
Yeah.
5 year or 7 year or 12 year, or I was, like I just mentioned, I was hanging out with Jimbo and Leanne, and so Jimbo, he had the tongue throat cancer in 2015, and he said it took him 7 years to recover enough from that intensive surgery to get back into the studio physically and also mentally. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's good for people to hear that we go through dry spells and it's okay. It doesn't
It's
mean
totally
that you're
okay.
dead. It doesn't mean you're dead in the water.
No, it doesn't, because you're still the person that you are, and
Yeah.
you're still gonna, you still have a voice. Just sometimes you have to pause it for a while, you know? And I'm so glad I got back into it. I feel incredibly blessed, that I made the choice to quit being a welding contractor and to go back to school. And it's funny, I did all that schooling, 3 years, got a licensure, and I ended up getting the job that I wanted to get when I first moved
Hmm.
back to Mexico, which was funny because, it took 8 years to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but then when I got back, it was like, well, I was just surprised no one forgot me. Because when I because I
I'm
ended up
not
going, I
surprised,
started,
but
I started going to conferences again. They was like, oh my God, Matt. And I'd be like, I'm trying to think what your name is. Like, but like, it was like all those friends were still as solid as ever,
yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
And
Me too.
I love that about the casting community. The
Hmm.
iron community is so special. Uh, because those friendships last forever, you know?
Absolutely do.
Yeah, I can't wait till the conference comes up.
I know. Well, it's like um less than a month.
Yeah, like 2 weeks. I got pour iron next week before I go.
Yeah, you need a piece for the exhibition.
No, I already got my piece
I'm
submitted.
just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, I need to cast a piece for uh Noah and Allison's Granite City thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I submitted a piece and I still
Yeah.
want the same piece, but I didn't have it finished. And so I'm gonna finish it this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good,
So I'm gonna
good. Yeah. So when you pour iron, are you going to be pouring in Albuquerque, or will you go to
go to
Las
Vegas.
Vegas? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the place to go.
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. And
So
Rhiannon is there.
Rhiannon's there, and I'm gonna
I
go
heard
help her.
she's rocking it.
She is. She is. She's a fabulous person too. I'm
Absolutely.
so, I'm so glad she's there. You know. she's got a lot of work to, you know,
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
things the way she needs to have them.
Yeah.
She's
But
got
she
to do
will.
she's got to undo some love dizziness and get it.
I think she's up to the challenge, and I
No,
think
she
that
is.
there's support,
She's like, at first she was like, I don't know where to start. I'm like,
well, but that could be anywhere with
yeah,
anything. I
yeah,
mean, because even Emily Baker at GSU trying to figure out, okay, where do I go from here? I'm in now. Where do I go from here? It's like that with
yeah,
a lot of places, but it's good that they're still up and running and not closing like other
yeah.
places. You know, we'll see that.
I think George really supports, and he's really happy that
I think so.
Emily is running that program. I mean, every time I've talked to George, he's just ecstatic about what a good choice that he feels he made in Emily,
And they
and
made, yeah,
she's
yeah.
fabulous. I mean, even at the Western, I stayed with Emily and her friends. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I was in what's it called? Ocean Beach at her friend's house.
Nice. Oh,
And so
for sure. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
because that's her old stomping ground. I
that's
remember
her old stomping ground. Yeah.
we all went out to dinner in a restaurant that she recommended, and yeah, it was great. The Western was great. What a wild ride. I'm excited about this loss. It's gonna be, yeah. So funny story is I was um yesterday booking my rental car because I rent cars just because the vehicles that I have right now can't. I don't know if I feel like taxing them with the miles. And it's not even like a 2-day drive for me. It's like 8 hours or 9 hours or whatever. But I rent cars. And so I was like, right before I was pretty sure because I thought it was always like the second weekend in April. And I was like, right before I clicked the like reserve button, I was like, let me check the NCCCIAP. Let me check the website. And it's like, no, it's April 2nd. It's a
Yeah.
week earlier than I had originally put on my calendar. And
Oh
I was
no.
like, oh no. So, but it's okay. But I just, it's just funny. It's coming sooner than I expected. But I'm ready to go. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. It's been a long 2 years when I've been waiting to go back. So, all right. So anyway, and I think that that's when I met you in Granite City is when you were teaching.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then
Yeah.
you were on the steering committee with me
Yeah.
for 2019.
Well, this hat. This is 2019 and
Look at
20.
that hat. Can you just show it really cool? Oh, that is a loved hat. That is a well-loved
Oh
hat.
yeah, it's got a lot of stains and maybe some dirt marks. I don't wash it.
It's okay. It's bad luck. It's bad luck.
Yeah, it's a very worn hat. It's faded a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's good. It's great. Yeah, you earned that. I feel like a lot of
Anybody who serves on the steering committee earns
yeah,
whatever they get. I mean, yeah, we got
absolutely.
a hat. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hats
but
and shirts
you
and
do it for love. I mean, but that
oh
steering
yeah,
job, that's a tough job,
it's hard. Yeah. I think that it was really great when it kind of got fleshed out and so then it wasn't just a few people doing everything. It's more formalized in a way that you have two people that are doing performances, two people that are doing guest furnaces, two people in charge of student cupola competition, two or three or five people in charge of exhibition.
Yeah, you need a lot. And when they only had two, it's just like, come on, guys, we need more help than
It
this.
was awful. It was crazy bad, but yeah, so yeah. And I think that's when I really really got to know you and be buddies with you. And then Um, so then how did you get from teaching to the position that you're in now?
That's a funny story. So the artist I work for, Jean Quick to See Smith, I've known her forever. Um, I've known her since I was at Tamron because she was a regular fixture at the Tamron Institute. Um, But her son, Neil, taught with me at IAI. And so basically, Neil and I taught together for my entire time at um, IAI. And then Neil suddenly quit, which was like, devastating to me because I was just like, that's like it's my best buddy. He's
Yeah.
my department chair. And also the one who shields me from, administrative danger.
Yeah.
Um, I, 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 I walk dangerously with administrations, gets me in trouble. And when he was quitting, I was just like, man, I'm screwed if you leave. And I was going through some things, because I was also I was faculty council chair, for the, and so I did a lot of, I mean, I was a vocal person. I was just trying to make things better for everybody. But um, after Neil left, I think I ended up losing my job um, about 3 months later, right before the South Dakota conference in Vermilion. And I was already like, I got to get out of here. I don't, toxic workplace. I need to leave.
Yeah.
Uh, so I was already halfway moved out when I got fired. And then, the funny thing is, it's a federally chartered school.
Hmm.
There's little weird nuances about federal agencies that I don't know, I'm paranoid about. But like Neil lost all his contacts when he left the school. Like they disappeared from his phone because when you're on, they had access to our phones. And when
Wow.
I got fired, I lost all my contacts. So I had to go through, it took me about half a year just to recover all the contacts I made in my 8 years at the Institute of American Indian Arts because they all were erased from my phone. Um, and I
Wild.
realized Neil said the same thing happened to him. But when I got back from Vermilion, because I gotten fired right before the conference in South
Wow.
Dakota,
Okay.
and I didn't know what I was going to do. And the day I got back from South Dakota, Neil finally called me and he said, "Sorry, it took me a month to find your number. I
Oh
had to
my
go
gosh.
Because like I had to go through all my text messages because all my contacts were erased." I was like, that's funny because all my contacts were erased too. And I only answered this call because it looked somewhat familiar. The number, it didn't come up as his name. And then he said, "Well, what are you doing?" He's like, "You didn't get another job, did you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, thank God." He's like, "I need you. I need you to open up a sculpture studio and start building sculptures with me and my mom." And I was like, "Fantastic." And they said, "Okay, you have a job interview tomorrow." And they were like, "Here's the salary. Do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yeah." Is it paid more than teaching?
Yeah.
And I've been working and that's been a wild ride. Like working with her has just been the craziest thing. Like, right away we were, she had a solo show at the Whitney. And so we were in New York doing stuff. We were doing all these like things, and the show traveled, and then we were also making new work constantly. Um, and it's just been a wild ride because I mean, we get paid by the gallery in New York City. And we get an unlimited budget, basically. I mean,
Wow.
it's not
Yeah.
limited, but I don't have to go and ask permission unless I'm buying, like, a $4,000 welder. Then I
Yeah.
go,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Can I buy this welder?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, go buy the welder." But I really get to do whatever I want as far as like, so up until she died, and she died a little over a month ago now.
Wow.
But I was texting her 2 days before she passed away, and
Wow.
she worked all the way to the end.
Wow.
And I'm guaranteed my job for another 2 years because
All right.
we have a solo show in New York coming up. We have
Yeah.
a major solo show in Edinburgh, Scotland at the Fruit Market. That's in October. Um, and then we have possible shows in, Paris and Germany. So we're busy, and
Wow.
she left a long laundry list of things that we need to finish. And we had a
Wow.
lot of work that was in process. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're busy. I'm busy every day. Um, I've been sick the past couple days, um, but we have so much work to do, and we have our boss coming in from New York on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So I have meetings on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and and we're getting ready for these shows. And we're like, I've shipped out, I don't know, 5 or 6 large sculptures in the past couple months.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been crazy. We're busy. Like, but
Well,
we knew,
that's good.
yeah, we knew she was gonna die. It
Yeah.
wasn't sudden, and she had pancreatic cancer. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
I just remember finding out in October, and I was just like, oh God, this is gonna end soon. And really, she outlasted any of the doctors. They said, oh,
Yeah.
you only got so much time, but
Yeah.
the art kept her alive. And
Yeah.
us checking in with her every day kept her alive.
Mm-hmm.
Her
Yeah.
painting every day kept her alive. And Neil was at her side nonstop, and then they would bring me in for meetings, and we'd go
Mm-hmm.
over, like, ideas and plans. And but yeah, losing her was just this huge loss. But I learned so much working, with an
Mm-hmm.
artist of that caliber, you
Yeah.
know who has a career that was never ceasing.
Mm-hmm.
She's I think she's the first native person to ever have a solo show at the Whitney. And she just leaps and bounds. I mean, even from that Whitney show, I think we sold pieces to the Museum of Modern Art, and she's in collections everywhere. And so now it's more about managing her career. Um, so I think my job couldn't last longer than 2 years, but for our gallery arrangement, it's we're gonna maintain our studio space until for the next 2 years, and then or a year and a half. I think it's about a year and a half now. Um, and then we're establishing a foundation in her name. I mean, just that adventure alone, like we got to go to Louise Bourgeois' house,
Oh,
you
whoa.
know, and no one gets to do that. Like, and that was the only thing we couldn't take pictures.
Yeah.
We met with their foundation director,
Yeah.
and then we all got to go in the backyard with the original spider that she made,
Yeah.
and took pictures around Louise Bourgeois' spider that was in her backyard in New York. And her backyard was smaller than my backyard. I got a small backyard,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
spider took up the whole backyard
Oh my
basically
gosh.
of her house.
Yeah.
And, like, it was just so cool to get to go into where Louise Bourgeois slept and where she
Yeah.
worked, and they didn't change anything. Like they said, we left it exactly how it was um when she died. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, all artists are crazy slobs because there's just
Yeah.
shit where
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like, this place is a mess. It's like exactly how it was when she was working
Did
until the
she
day.
have like a area of like industrial
I'm sure they had an
garbage?
off-site studio, but,
Okay.
like,
I have
that's
a funny
like a
story.
brownstone in, like, near, the east side, near the East
Yeah.
Village in
Yeah.
Chelsea. So,
I'm gonna write. I have a story to tell you at the after show about deinstalling one of her pieces.
oh, cool.
And if I can manage it, I might even be able to, for the after show, scrounge up photos of this dumpster fire that was a part of. But anyways, well, let's carry on with this. So you're still gonna be working, making this body of work, continuing the legacy.
Yeah.
But I've also realized just right now that we haven't actually talked about your body of work.
Oh
or
boy.
how it developed. Like usually I try to keep people talking about, well, what kind of work were you making in grad school? What type of work were you making it? And I try and have that going as the story is going, and I've completely forgotten. So can you just give us whatever you want to, about your development? Maybe like when you started using cast iron elements in your body of work, what was that like? And then we'll kind of go from there to where we're now.
I totally do different things now than I did when I got started.
I mean, but that's part of the journey.
I mean, I've always loved cast iron from the
Mhm.
minute I saw it blow out of a furnace.
Yeah.
Um, but like with my current body of work, it's easily relatable to my early stuff and even the early casting. But the new body of the work I've been mostly focused on in the past like 10 years really came out of my art education studies.
Uh-huh.
Um, I I took a class in archetypal psychology, um, where um, we learned this practice, art practice of sticking to the image, and it was kind of based on research by not only uh, Robert Hillman, who's a well-known uh, psychologist and scholar, and Patricia Berry, another scholar. I think she was actually one of Hillman's wives and students. Um, and there was another guy, Howard McConaughey, who was a art therapist and psychologist. But so in that class, we talked about sticking to the image, and so we would have these drawing exercises where we draw something, and then we would just stick. We would do this sort of reflective practice, and that's when the houses came out. Was during these classes, and then I just started developing it, and I went to Howard McConaughey's house. He's dead now too, but Howard really liked my work, and I was actually running a gallery at that time for the university, and I did a solo show of his, and he became a good friend, autographed my book, but his book is called Art and Soul. It's a fantastic book. And I highly recommend it to anybody. But it was all about that reflective practice. So I really developed my visual language using this reflective art practice. And that's where everything kind of developed. So a lot of it's pretty heady. It goes into like, everywhere from mythology to, everyday things, but it all kind of came together to where I started being able to refine my visual language. And one of the things, um, you know, both Jean Quicktesy Smith and her son Neil always promoted, and I always like to plug Neil's app in every talk I do.
Yeah.
It's Artist Ideas. It's on Apple and Android. It's free. If you look up Artist Ideas, one of the main ideas, and Jean always really pushed for this was like, you need to have a toolbox of icons. If you want to be a successful artist, you need to have a toolbox of icons that you can draw from. Um,
Mm. Mhm.
and that's a really good practice. And you don't want to have too many things. Uh, but it's like, she would always say, we need to find, like, if you have two things, you need a third thing to make the idea complete, or a fourth thing. You just got to figure out what those things are and how you can build the idea or the metaphor or the statement or the story. So she's been a huge influence. My work's developed a lot. I think just having the experience of hanging out with her and, those other artists that she hung out with, which are super supportive people, um, practicing like using those icons and building metaphors or building stories. And I've really, I think, captured that a lot in my most recent work because,
Uh-huh.
there's the house, and it's, everyone does houses, but houses, that's such a powerful symbol. It's a
Yes.
powerful archetype that's
Yes.
easily relatable. And then So I've mixed it with hooks, foundry hooks and auger screws and ladders. And so I really, over the years have matured enough to where I've developed a visual language that is solely mine. Um, I don't think, there are other, fantastic artists that have used the house form, like Jennifer Torres.
Mm-hmm.
Huge fan of Jennifer Torres. I remember when she first started doing some of those houses, and I was like looking at my sketchbook, and I was like, how's she getting my ideas? Like, she's stealing my ideas. And then I had a friend of mine say, Matt, you know, no, you know, it's everyone uses the house idea. Like but the way you do it is different than I'm
Yeah.
like, no, it's exactly the same. Like, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like, I had a lot of friends encourage me, like, no, don't give up, keep going with the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't get out of the series. I don't know how to get honestly, I don't know what else I would do. And now I'm just pushing it into high gear and like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start making piles of houses
Yeah.
and in a large scale. That's one of the things I want to do this summer at Sculpture Trails is cast
Oh,
like 30, houses that are about this big
yeah.
and make a big pile in the
Yeah.
wood, a pile of detritus.
What sorry, side note, what week are you gonna go to trails?
I'm going to be there the same time Michael Baggerly's there, and I think that's
Okay.
the third week, the last week.
Okay. All right. Cause I'll be there for the final big fire
Yeah,
at night like event thing.
I'm probably
So
going to run into Jerry over at Sloss, and I'm going to be like, "Here's my $650, and I'll give more money later on."
what a steal. Yeah, 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 yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
a steal. I
It
mean,
really is. Oh my gosh. Have you been before?
no, I feel terrible that I have to
No,
say that.
dude, no, you're doing it. You're doing it now. You're
No,
doing it the
I'm
right
super
way.
excited about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. What a
I'm
great
just gonna
time.
have a ball there, and a lot of my
Absolutely.
friends are gonna be there at the same time. So I'm just
Yeah, yeah.
like,
I'm so excited. Okay. So, yeah, so you've got plans for new pieces to be cast this summer.
I have a pile of pieces, that are unfinished.
Oh yeah.
So
I
I just
know.
took this show down, and my studio is full of stuff. I need to reorganize and redo things, and I got to keep finishing off this other work. And I just had a friend of mine call me tonight, and he's really well established artist. He actually worked for Phil Hutzelman at Inferno Foundry too.
Oh,
At
yeah.
the same time that Julie might have even worked there.
Yeah.
His name's Kevin Box, and Kevin called me tonight, and he was just like, or he sent me a message on Messenger. It's like, I don't know how to get a hold of you. He was like, you don't have gallery representation, and I need to get you gallery representation in Santa Fe. And I was like, hey man, if you want to do that, that's totally cool. I mean, I don't do that game,
Yet.
and I haven't, but
Okay.
now I'm at that time to where like he's like, you got so much good work, Matt. You need to be carried by a gallery in Santa Fe. So
Yeah.
he's going to do that for me this weekend, I guess. And
Awesome.
you know, I'm doing a public art summit that I applied to and got into at the Albuquerque Art Museum. So like a summit of artists that are all coming together to um, learn more about the public arts program in New Mexico, both through the city of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County and Santa Fe and other places. So that's exciting. Um,
Oh, tell us about
yeah.
your show that just came down though. So tell
Oh, the
us
show was
like
fantastic. Oh,
where mention where it was.
the show was at Highlands University. It was at the Reider Gallery. In the Donnelly Library at Highlands. It's actually an amazingly nice gallery. And I'm glad I got to show there because the space is fantastic. And I really wore myself out because I finished pieces, three pieces, new pieces, or three pieces
Yeah.
that were big for that show. And so I basically spent my entire Christmas vacation grinding and using every penny I had to get sandblasting done to, because I had things sandblasted and I don't have a sandblaster. I live in an HOA.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
wouldn't let me have a sandblaster, even if I begged them for it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it it was a good show, and it was a good representation of my, I guess, my newer, you know, work and ideas.
Yeah.
So it really
Okay.
came together really nice. I had prints
Yeah.
because I've still done a lot of printmaking because
Uh-huh.
Jean and Neil are both, avid printmakers. And so I mean, we have a printmaking studio. So I've kept up with my printmaking a lot. And I've put forth a lot of my sculpture ideas into prints.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a whole bunch of prints now. And we spent a whole day making monotypes with Jean in the studio. And I put all those in the show.
Yeah.
Um, didn't sell any of them, but I mean,
Not
I
yet.
love,
Not
yeah,
yet.
not yet.
More will be revealed.
Yeah, hopefully I do sell more work soon. So
Well,
we'll see.
getting into a gallery is one of the first steps,
Yeah,
or
the,
getting
the, the
gallery
show
representation. Yeah.
the show was really good. And that was the thing. Like, even my friend Kevin was just like, I know you're an academic guy. You don't really need to gallery representation. He's like, but you do now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he's like, your job's not going to last forever. You're
Hmm.
not teaching anymore. And I'm not closing the door on teaching.
No.
I
No.
might apply for, if the right job comes up,
Yeah.
I'll I'll
Think.
apply.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, if a job opens up in Maine near my parents, I
Oh.
apply for a job.
Yeah.
And if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't.
Yeah.
But there's one coming up in a year. So I
Okay.
already got my sights set on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing to have your
Yeah.
sights set on things, but it also sounds like your path has been very fortuitous in that it all kind of works out. Even when you talk about losing your college teaching job, that's like
Oh
so
yeah,
like
that was like
shocking.
a kick in the gut.
Yeah.
Like,
But then seeing how much you have benefited from the position that you've had for the past couple of years and how your work has grown probably more from this exposure than if you were still
yeah.
teaching.
So that the job that I've had for the past, since 2022, I think 2022 it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that was a big game changer for sure. And it really developed my, I think, professionalism. You
Mhm.
know, understanding working with I work for a gallery. They
Mhm.
pay my paycheck, my benefits.
Yeah.
We have regular meetings. But I also get to meet like curators and people who run museums. Like, I've gotten to hang out with people at the Whitney regularly,
Yeah.
Museum of Art, people who support artists that are part of the Guggenheim Foundation,
Yeah.
museums across the country where we take work and do things. Um, that exposure is mind blowing. Like, going to art ball, that's crazy. You know, I never thought of going ever visiting Art Basel in Miami. But now I've done that, and I'm going probably to Switzerland for the next Basel. So
Wow.
so we rented a massive space in Switzerland to have like right now I build canoes out of wood. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so we're gonna have a fleet of canoes at Basel in Switzerland. So we're excited.
Yeah.
And we're the same thing in Edinburgh. We're gonna have all these pieces. It's new work. So, but I've learned a lot, especially in the
Mhm.
past 3 years.
Well, so that's where you are now, and this is the part of the interview where of everything that you've learned in the past few years or just in anything,
Right. Yeah.
do you have any advice?
Never give up. Always find a way to stay in the game. Like, I was at that point when I was working construction and doing all that stuff and running a welding business where I was ready to give up. Um, and and I'm gonna credit Matt Wicker again because Matt was coming in for an Iron Tribe, and I wasn't gonna go to the Iron Tribe, and Matt was just like, "You got to get back into this," and that real quickly, I was like, I can still do this if I just if I participate. And that's my advice to anyone. Just keep participating. If you keep participating, you're always going to be a part of it. And the beautiful thing about the cast iron art community is people don't forget you, even if you were gone for a bunch of years. Because when I came back, it was like I never left. Like those guys were all guys and girls and they, thems, and theirs. They were all still my friends. And I like, man, you can't ask for anything better than the cast iron art community as far as being an artist, I don't think. I don't know any other group that hangs out like we do.
I don't know either.
No, I've
Some
never,
of them will be
you know,
close, but
I mean, like if you go to a printmaking conference, it's really pretentious, clean. People aren't like
yeah.
sitting on the back of their trucks with a beer in their hand,
Yeah.
laughing, out loud.
Yeah, shooting a friggin' what's it called? The trebuchet to try and light a
The bonfire.
bonfire on the
Yeah.
other side of the field. Like,
Yeah, who
what?
who the fuck does that? Bunch of
Sometimes
crazy bunch of crazy people who are a bunch of
sometimes
pyromaniacs.
I come back and I tell these stories and yeah, sometimes I don't even tell them because I just want to keep them to myself. But yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Stay in
don't
it.
if that's my advice to anybody, just stay in it. I mean, even if you feel like you got out of it and you're stuck in a bartending job or something, you can get back into it. There's it should be your recreation. It should be it should be your self-care.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because also, I feel like our conferences are a lot of them working conferences. So no matter where you are or what you're doing, going to a conference and taking a workshop, you
yeah, take
will,
advantage of that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can make your components at the conference, leave with like your raw castings, and then, try and grind it in the back alley behind your apartment on Sundays.
On
I don't know.
Sundays. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah. And that's what you have to do. I mean, I work out of my garage. And my garage it's a 3-car garage. I have a big
mhm.
garage. But it's completely full of tools, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
tools, toolboxes, shelves, boxes, stuff. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. That's why I dread moving.
Oh
Like
yeah. Moving is hard. Moving is really hard, especially.
moving is very hard. Yeah.
Anyways, well, speaking of moving though, let's move on to the after show if you're ready. I feel like we've covered everything. I've got a lot of optional questions on here, but I feel like, I mean, we've covered everything that I had questions about.
Okay.
Do you have any like closing thoughts before we go to the after show and I tell you my crazy story of Louise Bourgeois'
Was
deinstall?
Um, I don't know. This has been a great conversation, so
It
I don't
has.
know what else I could possibly add to it.
All right.
Um, yeah,
All right. Then that's it. That's the best answer because it's like, okay, do you have anything that you said that you had two kind of after show. Do you want to give a little teaser?
I think my favorite, that one of them was like, what was your favorite iron pouring experience?
Yeah.
And my favorite iron pouring experience was at Skip Van Houten's house,
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, yeah.
Mississippi,
I can't wait to
and
hear that.
we were pouring
Wait, no,
the
don't tell us though. Don't tell us until they have to come over to the after show with
yeah,
the
go-
puppy with the
yeah.
puppies. But yeah. Oh man. Okay, I can't wait to hear.
Okay.
So then this is when I say to everybody who is listening or watching, thank you so much for tuning into this episode with Matt. Matt, thank you so much for letting me pick your brain about your life and early days of Sloss and school and your artwork and everything. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And so now let's go on over to the after show. If you want to come over and listen to our crazy stories behind the paywall, you know what to do because I say it at the beginning and end of every episode. But if not, we look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. And just so you know, this conversation today, it doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show where Matt and I continue our discussion, visit patreon.com/thepodcastiron. And for as little as $1 a month, supporters like yourself could possibly get access to the after show recordings from not only this show, but every episode that's ever been published. And so if you're new here, the after show is just an additional 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes even more, where the guests and I speak a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. And so if you sign up at any level, you'll immediately gain access to all of those. And every single dollar really does help subsidize the costs of making this podcast publicly available. And in return, you get access to private content. So it really is a win for everyone. So the after shows are also available as one-time purchases. Wow, what a commercial this is becoming. But if you're not able to support monthly, but want to hear an after show for a specific guest or maybe like your professor, you can now have an individual purchase of an after show. So as we wrap up this public portion of the episode, I just wanted to say how much I have enjoyed this conversation. I consider it a gift to have gotten the chance to learn about Matt's journey and the life lessons that he has learned along the way. I also want to once again thank our top supporters of this episode. So thank you to the Sloss Metal Arts for your continuous support of this podcast and your year-round work as a National Center for Iron Casting and Metal Art, and especially for providing visiting artists opportunities and hosting our national conference. And thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for your support and for everything that you do in service of cast iron artists in the Western United States. Finally, thank you to all of the individual supporters on Patreon. Your contributions are invaluable and make it possible for me to continue producing this show. And so if supporting financially isn't in your budget personally, I completely understand. And instead, sharing this podcast with someone you think might enjoy it helps just as much. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all of my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon and have a great day.